Hello everyone, we're back with part 2 of our video, recapping some signings, trades, and buyouts that have happened from over the past 2 days over the draft. We'll get to all of that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Edmonton Hockey channel. Before we get into this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for your support. We're able to with all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section below so someone else gets in today's video. Now, like usual, I talked about this in my last video. We're doing a quick recap here of what happened during the signings, the buyouts, and the trades that happened during the draft period. So we're just going to finish it up here with all the other things that happened. So first, we have 4 signings that happened over the past 2 days, at least at this point in time. The Edmonton Oilers have extended backup goalie Calvin Pickard. That's a pretty good pickup there for the Oilers. Pickard actually worked quite well as the backup this year for Edmonton. He signed a 2-year extension with AV of $1 million that'll begin at the start of next year. It's a pretty good pickup there for the Oilers to get Pickard. Last year, played his entire season at the AHL level, putting in 38 games, putting up a 2.70 GAA and a 912 save percentage. This year, had 4 AHL games, putting up a 2.02 GAA and a 939 save percentage. Also gone to 23 NHL games, putting up 2.45 GAA and a 909 save percentage. So Pickard looked good. He looks as a good backup. I do wonder what this means for Jack Campbell going forward, but Pickard's probably going to be a backup next year. We talked about in our last video how the Blues acquired the signing rights to Alex Texier. The RFA did extend with them. Texier gets a 2-year extension with AV of $2.1 million to remain with the Blues for next little while. Like we said, Texier came off a season where he had 12 goals and 30 points in 78 games, so it's a pretty solid pickup there for the Blues to get a solid third-line player and extend him on a decent deal. I think 2 years at $2.1 million is a pretty good deal for a guy of Texier's stature. So I think that's a pretty good pickup there for the St. Louis Blues. And then the Utah franchise has signed 2 players to extensions. First, they signed Michael Kesselring, who actually had a really good season last year, really came into his own as like a solid third-pair defenseman, signs a 2-year extension with an AV of $1.4 million that begins at the start of next year. It's a fantastic sign there for the Utah franchise. Kesselring's coming off a season where 2 years ago, playing 59 AHL games, putting up 15 goals and 29 points, also had 3 assists in 9 NHL games. This past year, playing 65 NHL games, putting up 5 goals and 21 points, a career high for him. So Kesselring looks really good. I think he should round out as like a solid third-pair right-shot defenseman there for the Utah franchise, so it's a pretty good pickup there. Now, there's been no official announcement at this point, but there's a lot of talk that the Utah franchise has also signed Valimaki to an extension. I think it was a 2-year deal with AV of $2 million. We'll have to double-check on that when it's officially announced, but that's a pretty good sign there for Utah to sign him to an extension. He's had 4 goals and 34 points in 78 games 2 years ago, had 2 goals and 17 points in 68 games last year, so looks like a pretty good defenseman. I think it could still round out that solid top 4 in Utah, so it's a pretty good pickup there for Utah. So some interesting signings from the past couple of days, saying Valimaki and Kesselring extend in Utah. We also got a buyout update earlier today on Saturday, just after the draft finished up, and that is that the Buffalo Sabres are indeed buying out Jeff Skinner, so I don't think that's too much of a surprise. A lot of people thought Skinner would be bought out. Probably going to have a lot more buyouts over the next day or two, but some interesting notes there to see Buffalo buy out Skinner. He's going to save them, I think it's around $7.5 million this upcoming season. It's going to save them about $4.5 million next year. It's going to save them only about, I think it's $2.5 million the year after, but then they have a $2.4 million cap penalty for 3 years following, so it's not an overly ideal situation there for the Buffalo Sabres to buy out Jeff Skinner given his contract and his length. But I think the amount of cap space and cap flexibility they'll get by moving on from him this year, I think that's a pretty good pickup there for the Sabres. So the Sabres have moved on from Jeff Skinner, have bomb out. Skinner will be a UFA, can sign wherever he wants, and the Sabres are going to get about $7.5 million in cap flexibility for this upcoming offseason, so it's pretty good for there. And then going over to the other 5 trades that involve players during draft day, so that's a pretty good things there. I would start with the St. Louis Blues and the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Blues acquired future considerations from the Pittsburgh Penguins in exchange for a 2025 second-round pick and Kevin Hayes. So the Blues wind up moving off from Hayes' contract. That's pretty good. They're able to get $3.6 million in cap space. For the Penguins, they're able to get an extra second-round pick for next year's draft, so that's pretty good for them, given the fact they're a little bit low in draft capital. And they also got Kevin Hayes, who's not an overly bad center, but definitely didn't have a good season this past year. He's a center, like we said, making $3.6 million. Has this year and next year left on his contract. 2 years ago with Philadelphia, had 18 goals and 54 points in 81 games with Philadelphia. This past year had 13 goals and 29 points in 79 games with St. Louis. Didn't look overly good this past year in St. Louis, and I think hopefully the fresh start and back in Pennsylvania, this time with the Pittsburgh Penguins, could maybe do some good things for Kevin Hayes. So solid swap there. The Penguins get a second-round pick and a third-line center for the Blues getting nothing, so it's a pretty good pickup there. Then we saw the Capitals acquire Logan Thompson, who had apparently requested a trade from Vegas in exchange for 2 third-round picks. So for the Capitals, we know they just moved on from Darcy Kemper, so Thompson will most likely be the tandem goaltender with Charlie Lindgren next year. Lindgren and Thompson tandem could be really good. So Thompson's entering the final year of his deal at only a $766,000 cap hit. That's a pretty good pickup there for the Capitals. 2 years ago, Thompson had 2.65 GA and a .915 save percentage in 37 games. This past year had 2.70 GA and 908 save percentage in 46 games, and actually had 921 save percentage in 4 playoff games. So he looked fantastic. A lot of people think that Thompson was a little bit underrated in Vegas, so he winds up requesting a trade and he gets dealt to Washington. So he's going to have a new fresh start there in the Capitals organization. Meanwhile, the Golden Knights got the 83rd overall pick, a third rounder in this draft. They used it to select Pavel Mosevic, and they also got a third round pick in the 2025 draft that they'll have. So a couple of extra third round picks for them in order to move on from Logan Thompson, who wanted a fresh start. So it's a pretty good pickup there for the Golden Knights. Then we saw a minor swap here. The Bruins traded up 12 picks and got Vinny Letteri. In exchange, the Wild traded down 12 picks and got Jacob Lauko. So it's a decent trade for both sides. For the Bruins, they trade up. They get Vinny Letteri. That's a pretty good pickup there. He's a center right winger. Entering the final year of his deal, had 5 goals, 9 points in 46 NHL games this year. Also had 4 goals and 8 points in 10 AHL games. Looks like a pretty good player. Should be a solid call-up option there for the Bruins. So pretty good pickup there for the Bruins. Meanwhile, the Minnesota Wild get Jacob Lauko. Lauko's also a winger, but he's a little bit more younger, I think he is, and also a little bit more established. He's also entering the final year of his deal. Lauko this past year had 60 games of NHL action, picking up 2 goals and 10 points. 10 points were a career high for him, so that's a pretty good swap there. The Wild get a solid, tough, hard to play against bottom 6 forward. Then the Bruins get a solid call-up option and Letteri, so it's a pretty good swap between the Bruins and the Wild, making that sort of a deal. Then we saw another trade for Vegas, this time involving the New Jersey Devils. The trade is as follows. The Vegas Golden Knights acquired the signing rights to Akira Schmid and former top 10 prospect Alex Holtz from the New Jersey Devils in exchange for Paul Cotter and a 2025 third-round pick. So for the Knights, it seems like Schmid will be the third stringer. They'll try and find a new backup for Hill for next year. Schmid is a solid goaltender. Like we say, he's signing rights, so he's an RFA, so he needs a new deal. But Schmid's coming off a season, not this past year, but 2 years ago, where he had 18 games of NHL action, picking up a 2.13 GA and a 922 save percentage, and was their best goalie in the playoffs, picking up a 921 save percentage in 9 games. This past year, had 23 AHL games, picking up an 894 save percentage and a 3.06 GA, and 19 NHL games, picking up a 3.15 GA and 895 save percentage. So it wasn't overly great this year at either the NHL or AHL level. Hopefully a couple more years in the AHL, he could be back to that solid goaltender that we saw in the playoffs, not this past year, but the year prior. So it's a pretty good pickup there for the Knights to get Schmid, who I think eventually could be a solid tandem goaltender. They also get Alex Holtz, who was in desperate need of a fresh start. He's a winger. He was a 7th overall pick in the 2020 draft. He's in the final year of his ELC. This past year, Holtz played in 82 games at the NHL level, putting up 16 goals and 28 points, mostly on the team's third line. I think if he's in a more of a top 6 role, he could be a really good fit. 2 years ago, had 3 goals and 4 points in 19 NHL games, and 6 goals and 11 points in 14 AHL games. So he looks like a pretty good player, and I think Holtz could be a really solid add there for the Golden Knights, especially if they're going to lose a guy like Marchessault. So some pretty good adds there for the Golden Knights to add Holtz and Schmid. Meanwhile, they do give up on Paul Cotter. It's a pretty bad trade there. He was a solid depth addition. He should be a solid depth addition for the Devils. He's got this year plus next year left at a $775,000 AAV. Cotter this year was coming off a season where he had 76 games played, 7 goals and 25 points. So looks like a pretty good player, solid bottom 6 option. I think that could be a really good pickup there for a Devils team who was looking for some bottom 6 help. So it's a pretty good pickup there. They also got the Knights 2025 third round pick, so they'll be able to either use that in a trade or use it next year as part of drafting pieces. So that's a pretty good pickup there. And then we also saw a swap of signing rights as the Toronto Maple Leafs acquired Chris Tanev signing rights from the Dallas Stars in exchange for RFA Max Ellis signing rights and a 2026 7th round pick. So it's a decent swap there for the Stars. It sounded like they were not going to sign Tanev, so he moved his signing rights. No contract as of yet. Maybe in the next day or two we'll see a contract extension, but Tanev's coming off a season where he had 2 goals and 19 points in 75 games with the Stars and the Flames. Solid defensive defenseman, someone who I think the Leafs targeted quite a bit, so we'll see if they're able to get him signed. Meanwhile, for the Dallas Stars, they knew that they weren't signing him, so they get as much as they can for him. They get 2026 7th rounder, which will be the Leafs 7th rounder in the next couple of years. They also get Max Ellis, who's a decent forward prospect. He's a right winger, was an undrafted player. He's also an RFA, so he needs to be signed, playing over in the AHL this past year, put up 4 goals and 14 points in 36 games. Could eventually be maybe like a bomb 6 winger, so that's a pretty good pickup there for the Stars, but that's the other trade we saw. So some interesting moves there. I think the Leafs win the Tanev deal, given the fact they're able to get signing rights. Maybe the Stars win it if Tanev walks still as a free agent, but we'll have to wait and see. I think the Knights win the Schmid deal, given the fact they're able to get both Schmid, who's eventually going to be a tandem goaltender, and Holtz, who I think could be a really good top 6 forward. I think the Wild win the Lauko deal, given the fact they're able to get Lauko just from moving down 12 spots in the 4th round of this year's draft. I think the Capitals win the Thompson deal because Tim Thompson's a fantastic goaltender, and at that sort of a cap hit, only giving up 2/3, I think is a pretty good pickup there for Washington. And then on top of that, I think the Penguins do win the Kevin Hayes deal. As much as the Blues do get some cap relief, the Penguins get a 2nd round pick for taking on a 3rd line center, so it's a pretty good pickup there for the Penguins. So some pretty interesting trades happening today. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of these and who you think won these deals, plus what you think about the signings and the buyouts down in the comment section below. Definitely love to hear your thoughts on all of that. But that's all I want to talk about for today. Or until this video, really like it, remember to subscribe down below. Thank you for your support. We're able to help you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section below so you can also discuss today's video, or so a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So check that out. I'll leave a link to that in the description below, and I can't wait to see you guys all for next video. See you guys soon.